everyone, Carol here at Oak House Journals. Thank you so much for joining me today. I just thought I'd share with you a few bits that I've been working on over the last couple of days, and I've been making these clusters. I tend to call them Scrappy Scraps, but I think most people call them clusters, and I've been making them to go into my journals either as tuck spots or pockets or even as journaling cards, because I always line the back of them with tea stain paper, so if I'm using them as a journaling card you can write on the back, but also if you're using them as a pocket or a tuck spot, then all the embroidery and the machine stitching doesn't catch on whatever you're putting in the pocket. These are not designated actually for my journals. These are going in my creation boxes that are coming out shortly. So I just thought I'd give you a quick run through and show you what I've been doing. So they're all either backed onto handmade paper or scraps of mixed media paper that I've dyed. This one is some handmade paper, and it's laid up with a piece of a vintage French document. This is actually some vintage French linen fabric that I had in my stash. I loved the font on this book page. It's a contemporary book and wanted to include it. And then there's some contemporary and vintage lace here and just a tiny little mother of pearl button stitched on there. Now I haven't backed these as yet, and this is to show you what it's like on the back. So if I was using that as a journaling card, I wouldn't really want to write on that. And the same again if I was using that as a pocket or a tuck spot, because whatever you're putting into the pocket is going to catch on this stitch work here. So I will either stitch onto the back, or I will glue it, and I tend to more often than not glue it. So that's one. This one I absolutely love. This is some embossed paper. This was an image from a book that I had which I was using for collage work, and I just loved the blues of those trees. It was a wintry scene, and again this the prose there that was rather nice. This was just the bottom off some broderie anglais ribbon that I ripped off, and it was too nice to throw away, so I stitched that on the bottom. And then there's just some layers of fabric there, and the embroidery is just very, very simple. It's straight stitch, and this one is just a collection of French knots. Then there's this one, which this was some Basildon Bond writing paper, some Amity Bloom Digi Kit. I think it's one of her wallpaper kits. You'll recognise that again. This was just some scraps of some calligraphy I was trying to do, not very well, and rather than waste it I thought I'd use it on here. And then this is various laces layered up again, a couple of tiny little seed beads, and all I have is one of these. I love the colours in this, so a lot of the seed beads that I've used for these clusters have come from that. This is just a bezel that I lined with some vintage paper, put a little pearl in there, and then filled it up with some glossy accents, and then I've just stitched it. I'm not sure you can pick that up. Just stitched it onto my Scrappy Scrap. This is a piece of mixed media work that I was playing with ages ago. I've stamped it and inked it, and then there's these little iridescent dimensional dots. So I decided to use it predominantly because it had a hint of pink up in this corner. So as you can see, I've done some embroidery up in that corner, and then for the opposite corner I had a couple of tiny weeny scraps of sari chiffon, as you can see there, and some sari silk. I've just layered a button up onto a paper flower. That's some Tim Holtz tissue paper. This is some mulberry paper, and I've just left it loose there so that you can flick it up and read that. Flowers which are swaying in the wind. And then this is some vintage French lace. This was a piece that came in my inspiration box from chapter 1. And I've had it on my work surface in my craft room for a while because it was just so gorgeous, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with it. So it had a piece of vintage lace underneath, this piece of cream, or rather beige, fine crochet lace on the top, and then just a little bit of vintage lace in the corner with a bit more embroidered detail on. So I've just added a little bit more lace just to give it a bit more dimension in this corner. I've put the seed beads across the top, and then I've just collaged. This was just, as you can see, handmade paper, lovely quality, and all I've done is layered it up with a little bit of prose. This is a torn image out of a British, I think it's Concise British Flowers book. It's like an encyclopedia book. So they had a tiny image there, so I just ripped that out because it was the right shade of blue. Then some wallpaper, some mulberry paper, more lace, a vintage stamp and a number, and of course I've embroidered, I've not embroidered on this one, but I've messy machine stitched round this one, and I really like how this one has come out. I like the irregular shape. Oh, and there's a bit of vintage book paper script there from an old letter, but I really love that one. I might not let that one go. I like it so much. In fact, I like them all. I just really enjoy doing these, and it's so relaxing to do. This was some blue handmade, gorgeous blue handmade paper that I was gifted. I've laid it up onto some embossed paper, dry embossed paper. This is some Amity Bloom wallpaper from her DigiKit. This is that French blue linen. And as you can see, I've just done those. Simple embroidery on it again. Nothing hard at all to these. A little bit of scrap of French book script. You know, I really can't help using a scrap of some French script somewhere, and I liked this, and I wanted it to go over the top of the French linen, so I ripped the bottom line off this little paragraph and glued it down on top, and then zigzagged over the top of it to give me some interest. Here's another one. I'll go through these in a bit quicker now because they're all very much of a muchness. This is that broderie anglais where I ripped the bottom off and used it on, whoops-a-daisy, on this one. So that's the bottom of this broderie anglais, and it had these little daisies on, so I've just put a little tiny seed bead in the bottom. There's a stamp there, there's some blue lace under here, wallpaper, and then, as you can see, French knots and straight stitch. This is one on some mixed media paper that I had. I got a bit carried away when I was ripping this paper and ripped a chunk off the bottom here. So I had a tiny scrap of sari silk that was on some paper ready to stick onto the bottom of a tag or something. So I decided I'd use it on the bottom here, and actually I'm really pleased I did. I love how it gives a little extra depth of colour. I've laid up lace here, some of the vintage lace, and as you can see, there is some handmade paper there, more embroidery. This is a signature from a letter. This piece here is just a scrap that I had from 49er Market from when I made those ephemera folders, just a tiny scrap that was in my tray. So you can use anything and everything for these. It's so easy, and I just like this piece. The year is at an end. Don't know why, but I just thought that was nice to tuck on there. Then there's this one, layers of lace here, scraps, seed beads on that broderie anglais. This is part of a stamp, and then this is part of a letter. So, and clusters of, again, French knots. On some of them I've done colonial knots. The only difference between French knots and colonial knots is French knots you go back down the same hole, and colonial knots you go down a different, slightly to one side of your original hole when you make your stitch. So these are a couple that I have on my desk to finish off. As you can see, I've done a little bit of embroidery in the corner there. I've done it in blues, and I'm just about to put some seed beads along the top there. I know, why don't I do a couple of French knots for you to see? Let's find some thread. Got some thread to one side. The reason being, I thought that this just looked a bit too simple. I just thought I might add a few more French knots on these to add a bit more interest. So I've just come up from the reverse, wrap my thread round 5 or 6 times, go down the same hole, just keeping my tension on my thread, and just gently pull through to the other side. I've still got that thread, I've caught on something there, still got my thread trapped, and I'm just going to, whoops a daisy, doesn't want to come down, there we go, just got my thread down. The only thing that you've got, oh, it's gone all the way through. It does help if you put a knot in your work, it really does. So actually, if you were doing an embroidery, you wouldn't put a knot, but that's one reason why I like to do the what's happened here, whoops a daisy, there we go, there's my knot. The one reason why I quite like putting the tea stain paper on the back is it gives you a nice neat finish as well. Just see where I need to come up. There we go. Try again. Holding my thread down through my existing hole. Just take up the tension a little bit, hold it with my thumb, and just gently maneuver it down and through. And there you have your French knot. I'll try and do another one, I think. Let's do another one to this one here. So I like to skewer through from the front to the back, for the simple reason that if you were doing an embroidery, you would work out from the back of your embroidery where you wanted to come up with your needle. But because you're working with cardstock, it's not quite so forgiving, and if you came up in the wrong place and decided you wanted to come up in another place on the front of your project, it would leave a hole there, which isn't quite what you want at all when you are trying to work. It will leave those skewer marks all over the place. So I tend to just kind of spot where I want to be from the front of my embroidery or my card, and just mark that out of the way and just gently make a hole so that I can easily put my needle through from the reverse by spotting where that hole is. I'm quite close to the edge, so I am wrestling with it a little bit here. But you see basically what I mean. It's easy enough to kind of make your hole and just work out through from the reverse where you need to put your needle through to bring it up to the other side. And it's so relaxing. You get going with this and you just don't want to stop. It really is. French knots, I have to say, are probably one of my favourite embroidery stitches to do. I just love doing them. I find them so relaxing. And with the colonial knots as well, they're slightly bigger because you're when you're going back down after doing your loops, you're going down in a slightly different place, and of course it makes the knot slightly bigger. There we go. My thread's catching on everything as I'm doing this. So as you can see, you can kind of build up your French knots so that you could kind of make a bigger plant, if you will. So I will carry on doing that because you don't want to see me sit there doing those. So I'll just put that through. As I say, I've got some tiny seed beads, these little tiny ones, and I'm just going to put one all the way along there. But as I say, I will not try and find where I want to place my seed beads from working down below. I will make my holes from the front, and then when I'm stitching them I can see where my holes are, and I'm not making oodles and oodles of skewer marks on the front there, although it doesn't really matter at all. So that's that one. This is another one that I'm going to be embroidering in a moment or two. Not quite sure where I want to embroider on this one, but you just go with the flow and do what feels comfortable, and it's amazing how it comes to you as you're doing these. And just quickly before I go, I thought I would show you these. Now these are a couple of vintage letters that I've had in my stash. This one dates back to 1956 and this one is 1957, and I decided I wanted to embroider these. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of the lady that I saw on Pinterest, that she is an embroiderer and she embroiders on envelopes. And I thought, oh gosh, I want to give that a try sometime. So I got these out ready this morning, so I'm going to give these a go, and I will come back to you and I will show you the end result in a very quick video in a few days or so. But because, as you can see, these envelopes were complete, but they are so fine that I thought that if I embroidered through these they would disintegrate. So what I've done is I have backed them with some paper, just normal paper from a book. It's not particularly thick, and I've just backed them. What I did was I slit the envelope. The envelopes were ripped down one side where somebody's obviously gone in to the envelope to get the letter or the contents out. So what I've done is I have, on the front piece where I will be embroidering, I have put this paper there to make it a bit more sturdy for me to embroider through. I've just put some tulle on the front, and this is a gorgeous, very delicate soft peach colour which ties in with the colour of the envelopes. And then this is some vintage French lace which I've put across the bottom, which is quite fortuitous because you can probably see there's two dark brown marks there which were on the envelopes or on this particular one. So what I plan to do is embroider this, and then I will put the back on my envelope like so, and I will machine stitch round it. Now the jury's out on whether or not I leave it open and use it as a tuck spot or a pocket in a journal. I think because this one is so delicate that what I will do is I will stitch it all the way around, and I will have it as a journaling card like so. With this one, I think I will do something slightly different. With this one, I thought I would back this as well. I haven't backed this. Yes, I have. I'm lying. Ooh, I'm lying. This is tea-stained paper, and I thought that I actually might put tea-stained paper on this as well. And then when I've done my embroidery and stitch this in place, I will leave it and make this one as a tuck spot. This one I actually decided I'd use this piece of cream sari silk and put that along the bottom and embroider over the top. So I will leave you with that at the moment, and I will, as I say, come back to you when I have done this and let you see how I've got on with my my embroideries. But I have to say, this one I'm particularly excited about the thought of embroidering on it, and again, it probably will only be very, very simple embroidery stitches, but I'm sure it'll give me great fun doing that. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today, as always. I hope I've inspired you to give something a go, even if it's just making these very, very easy scrappy clusters. They're great fun to do, and it uses up all sorts of lovely little bits of scraps that you might have lying around on your desk. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye bye now.